In this video, I'm test driving this Fiat Panda 1.1 Active Eco. I don't know what most of these words mean. So the Fiat Panda here in second generation form, it sort of jumped on the retro bandwagon by having a retro name, but the styling was completely unrelated. This is a fresh design launched in 2003. Design is by Bertoni. I happen to think it's a particularly good one. It's cutesy, but it's also modern. It's inoffensive. It's really nice, and there's some lovely details as well. If I bring you around this way, I love the way the window line goes up here, curves down, and then just straightens out on the back. It could have just been a straight line. It would have looked terrible. So that's really nice. This little crease on the waist, even the chunky door handles, I think that's all lovely bits of design. The designer at Bertoni who did this car also did the Scania trucks, and I can see hints of that in the indicators myself. Might just be me. That's my thoughts on the matter. Under the bonnet we have the fire engine. Now this is the only thing that was really carried over from the Panda, although here it's in slightly larger 1.1 litre form, producing a mighty 54 brake horsepower. But look, you got a plastic air cleaner, but you can actually see the engine. It's a single overhead cam, so it must be quite easy to do a timing belt on. It's at heart a very simple engine, and one Fiat still produces today, albeit they may have finally jumped to twin overhead cams. So when it comes to engine options, not really that varied on the second generation. There's a 1.2 version which has a few more brake horsepowers. There's a 1.4 which can have 100 brake horsepower. That's the HP 100, which as far as I can tell has no suspension at all. And there was also the 1.3 multi-jet, which doesn't have the best reputation as a diesel engine, but does offer great economy and about 68 brake horsepower, I think. So not apart from the 100 HP, none of these cars are particularly powerful, but that was true of the first Panda as well. Inside, the nice design work continues. I'm personally not all that keen on the plastic. I think it does look quite cheap, but Miss Hubnut loves the fancy vents which you can swivel around for your fresh air. No air conditioning because this is a fairly lowly spec, but we have got electric windows and central locking, and that doesn't include the boot. We'll get to the boot in a moment. And a nice little CD player. The build quality is okay. I mean, this example's only done 31,000 miles and this has already started splitting, and this airbag doesn't really seem to fit all that well into its recess. But everything feels quite nice. I like this gear change right in the middle of the dashboard. That's quite nice. It just falls really nicely to hand. We've got a city driving button which makes the steering, which is electric power assisted, makes it lighter. And the visibility is truly excellent. These windows have a real depth to them. Not something you necessarily see in many modern cars. So it actually feels quite light in here. It certainly isn't as claustrophobic as some modern cars can be. The view ahead, nice easy selection of dials, looking very, very super basic indeed in there. But again, the stalks have a nice feel to them. It just feels like a pretty nice car really, and it's certainly a nice comfortable driving position. Not much room for my clutch foot. We won't show you that, I'm wearing sandals. But otherwise, yeah, nice comfortable. The pedals are dead ahead of me. It's all good. Here in the rear, again, not too claustrophobic, big windows, but I'm struggling a bit for knee room behind me. That's not ideal. If I was behind Miss Hubnut, I'm sure there'd be plenty of space. It's a very simple, sort of a flat little bench. I don't think I'd like to spend too long here, but for pottering around town, the odd lift, I think it's entirely acceptable. Now the boot is a source of annoyance because you have to use the key. There is no lever, no button, no interior release, but and you have to operate the parcel shelf yourself. But plenty of room for my big backpack here. You're going to do well for your shopping. Plenty of space if you should need it. And the rear seat folds down. It isn't split because this is a low spec model. But again, you can feel the build quality. It feels pretty good. Let's start that little 1.1 litre engine up. I'll turn the fans down for a moment. Yeah, it's oh, we've got an airbag light flashing. That's exciting. It stopped. It's fine. Yeah, I thought it was going to go all Italian on us for a moment, but we're all good. But yeah, it's a fairly smooth, fairly bland modern 4-cylinder engine. just runs very nicely. We better do wipers. So here we go. Oh yeah, good washers and wipers, I would say there. Good overlap, no triangle of doom. So that's all good. But yeah, really good swept area in front, and an extra wipe when you've washed the windscreen. If we head to the rear, see where the wash is for that. It's backwards. Oh, it might need a new wiper blade.
Nice view though.
That's a cracking noise. It is a lovely view, yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a wiper that hasn't seen much use in its 31,808 miles. So we shall select first with this stubby little lever. Make sure I'm actually on the throttle pedal, and away we go. I can put my city mode on for lighter steering.
He's just tapping that button.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that feels like a classic Citroen now, completely over-assisted, completely devoid of any sense of feel whatsoever. So maybe we'll undo that. You'll have to live with a little extra noise. It's a really hot day. We are not closing the window. Air conditioning is not a feature of the 1.1 Active Eco. But good fuel consumption should be. I would expect over 50 to the gallon. I will look up to see if there is an official figure. But yeah, it's just a nice little car to drive, really. Yeah, good little mirrors. The ride is a little on the firm side, but I think that's just fairly typical modern, really. But we can do a very valid comparison of this car compared to our Daihatsu Charade. They would have been rivals when new. I'm not sure how the pricing worked, but the Charade has a 1.1 litre engine, and the major difference is that when I put my foot down at 20 miles an hour in third in this car, pretty much nothing happens at all, whereas the Charade has variable valve timing to boost low down torque. So despite being a smaller engine, it actually feels a bit perkier than this car does. This is a bit more typically Italian. You have to give it a few revs to really wake the thing up. But it's geared nicely enough that you can drive around town nice and briskly without having to absolutely thrash it. Yeah, it's good for bombing through the parking chicanes here in Shoreham in Sussex. The platform of this car was also used in the Fiat 500, the modern interpretation of that. So that's when Fiat did go full on retro. And also the Ford Ka or Car, or whatever you're meant to call it. It's the most annoying name tag that has ever existed, I think. But these cars, and also the Lancia Ypsilon, badged as a Chrysler in some markets, I think. So when Fiat had its rather ill-timed merger with Chrysler, that sort of badge engineering happened, and all these cars were built in Poland, where Fiat had been building many cars. So this car replaced not only the original Panda, which lingered on until 2003 in Italy, but it also replaced the Fiat Seicento, which was built in Poland. Now I think this is the only generation of Panda where you couldn't have a 2-cylinder engine option. The first generation certainly had one, and so did the third generation with the clever twin air engine. Right, very busy roads, but we're going to try and do a 0 to 60 test. That's 40, this isn't rapid. I think I'm going to run out of road, there's too many cars about.
No, I'm going to make it.
Oh, 60-ish.
Made it.
So if you open her up, she can get something approaching a shift on, which I don't think is bad for her tiny power output. The 0 to 60 time officially is 15 seconds, which I think drops to 20 if you went for the 4x4 version. I think my favourite version of the Pandas is the 4x4 Cross, where they bolted all sorts of plastic on. They actually had a locking diff as well. So I think they could be a lot of fun. And I know the Fiat Motor Club here in the UK, they have sessions where the Panda 4x4s, all three generations of Panda 4x4 will go and play in the rough stuff. I'd like to go along to one of those. Maybe I need to get myself a Panda 4x4. but I'm missing the sense of urgency you get with the Daihatsu's engine. I'm so used to a small engine having low down grunt, and this really doesn't have that. But then it's a much older engine. This fire engine came out in 1985, I think, because that's a bit of confusion we need to clear up. The first generation Panda had 2 marks, so this is a Mark III Panda, but it's second generation, if you see what I mean. And a hugely successful car. They sold 2.1 million of these. It's a very impressive number, given the car was in production for, I think, 11 years. There was some overlap with the third generation Panda. The third generation Panda was built in Italy, so they were able to overlap the production. I've got my foot down going uphill and we can't quite do 70 miles an hour. But it'll level out in a minute and we should actually get there. So if you're doing a lot of long distance work, especially in hilly terrain, then perhaps this isn't the engine for you. There we go, we're doing 70 miles an hour now. It's fairly peaceful. There is a fair bit of road noise and you can hear the suspension working, but these were cheap cars and you have to kind of remember that. They weren't trying to be limousines, they were trying to be cheap, and I think that's partly what made them successful. That and the fact they've got characterful looks without playing the retro card. So those looks I don't think are likely to date. I think, if anything, I reckon these Pandas are one to squirrel away. I think they're going to be quite collectible in years to come, because they are very simple. I think you'll be able to look after one even in 20 years time. And they sold in vast numbers, so we're everywhere. And at some point, once they've become super cheap and all vanished, everyone will remember them. There'll be a lot of nostalgia, I think. So they're not quite the Morris Minor of today, but maybe they're not so far from it after all. Oh yeah, she does not like hills. My foot is mashed into the floorboards at the moment and the speed is ebbing away. There's also a pleasing lack of gadgetry in here as well. So again, longer term, that's going to work to your benefit because there's not so much to go wrong. Can we overtake the Jag? Let's go for it. Steering is very direct. It feels a little twitchy at first. You really have to put so little input in to change lanes. Oh yeah, this is very much your typical Italian. Get it out on the brisk roads and you can give it a mild spanking and have a lot of fun, even with just 54 brake horsepower. I will have to say that while I'm liking the gear lever here, the center console around it is getting on my nerves because my leg just keeps hitting it all the time. That just doesn't seem ideal. It's really nasty hard plastic. There is a bit of a knees alert there, for which I apologise. Yeah, it's surprisingly refined, I think, as a package. I can see why people like these cars a great deal. Oh, what a jolly little car that is. More refinement than I expected. Perhaps I expect the wrong things of a Fiat, but it's actually just really nice to drive. And I will say it's a little underpowered in the 1.1 litre form. That may seem a strange thing for me to say, given I am the man who is power less is more. But if you want to enjoy that refinement on the motorway, I think you do need a little bit more grunt. So maybe the 1.2, or go crazy and go for the 1.4. There are definitely options for you. But yeah, an intriguing car. I think beautifully styled, lots of character. I like it very much. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget you can head to the Hubnut store and buy lovely merchandise, including these tools, t-shirts, we've got stickers, mugs, all sorts available. And I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Farewell.